All right, so welcome everyone. So we're back with another health coach skills tutorial today, and we're talking all about asking clear and focused questions. So one of the things that I love most about the work that I get to do as a health coach mentor is listening in to coaching demos. And based on the work that I'm doing right now with my own course, Health Coaching Essentials, and the two different courses that I'm participating in with IIN, I actually get to listen into about 44 coaching demos each week. So I get to listen into a lot of coaching. So a lot of new coaches just practicing their skills. And one of the things that I've really noticed lately is new health coaches asking these leading, loaded, stacked questions. So it's one of the things that I think is just a really just something that happens as a new coach. And I'm going to get into today why this happens, what's behind this, why do we ask questions in this way. I'm going to give you some examples of what these types of questions might sound like, and then I'm going to share with you a really, really powerful tip on what you can do instead to ask those clear and focused questions. So what I want to start first with is, why is this happening? I just have some notes here. If you see me looking down, that's just checking my notes. So why is this happening? Why do new coaches tend to ramble on, sort of ask really wordy questions, throw suggestions in there, have leading questions? Why is this happening? And I think really for me, I noticed a few things happening here. So in listening into, all of these coaching demos that I get to listen into each week, I've really thought, okay, what's happening here? What's going on? Why are coaches asking questions in this way? So it's always good to know why this is happening, so we can understand if it's happening with us, right? And really get to the root of it. So I think generally, with new health coaches, this comes from a good place, right? We just want to be clear. We want to ask a good question. And it really comes from wanting to serve the client. We want to make sure that our clients understand our questions and what we're trying to get at as we ask them. So I think it's really genuinely coming from a good place with new coaches, that we want to just really be clear. And I also want to say, and I was going to say this earlier in the introduction, that this is actually something that I really work on. I am very wordy. I repeat things a number of times. My reflections usually go really long. So this is something that in my own coaching practice that I'm really working on myself. So I just wanted to let you know that you're not alone in this. I totally get it. So yeah, number one, it comes from that good place. Coaches are just trying to get their message across. They want to be clear. They want to explain. I think also nerves are, of course, a big part of it. When we're new health coaches, we're not really confident in our skills. And of course, all these, demos that I'm listening into, these are unnatural circumstances. This is putting a coach, a health coach on the spot. They're having to coach in front of their peers. They're going to get feedback. So it's an unnerving experience, right? Pretty nerve-wracking. So nerves definitely play a part of this. So new coaches aren't as confident in their skills. They haven't had a lot of practice yet asking really great questions. They're not really sure what to ask or, how to formulate that good question. So definitely things are going to come out, maybe a little bit jumbled, a little bit unclear, a little bit wordy. So really understandable that this is happening, with new coaches. The other thing is that we're not really trusting ourselves yet as coaches, right? We're not trusting that we've got the right question. And so we ask it in a number of different ways in order to provide that clarity. And so, yeah, I think it comes from nerves. It comes from just a little bit in terms of that lack of skill, right? That lack of practice, that lack of confidence that we have in our skills. I think another thing that also happens that I notice is that new coaches are really uncomfortable with the silences, right? Those awkward pauses, those moments when nothing's being said. So a lot of times we just try to fill it in, right? We want to say a lot. So we just try to fill in all those spaces with different ways of asking the questions, throwing in a bunch of extra words or suggestions in there that we really don't need. And we're just really trying to fill that space, thinking like, I have to say something here as the coach. I can't just let it be all about the client, which, once we become confident in our coaching skills and the coach approach, we realize that actually we as the coach should be talking a lot less than the client. So sometimes, using these wordy questions just to fill in the silences. I think also, this can come from the ego as well, right? The fear a little bit. So we try to sound smart. We want to be the experts. We want to have all the answers, right? We want to try to fix our clients. So sometimes, our adding suggestions or leading questions do, come from the ego, this place of fear, of I don't know enough, I don't sound smart enough, I'm not the expert enough, what is my client going to think of me? So we go to that place and really want to make sure that our clients feel like we know what we're talking about and that we are good coaches. So we try to fill in with suggestions and leading questions. I think another thing that happens is sometimes, especially with those leading or suggesting questions, it's because we're not really embracing the coach approach, right? We're not honoring that the client is naturally creative, resourceful, and whole, and that they have the answers inside of them. So we really need to embrace that coach approach, that coach mindset to come from that place. So what we do instead is we give the suggestions, right? We lead our questions, we lead the client to a particular answer or outcome because we still want to be that expert and we want to tell the client what to do. So we haven't fully embraced the coach approach. So bottom line here, it comes down to a lot of trusting yourself as the coach, trusting your client that they have the answers inside of them, and trusting, the coaching process as well. So having those three aspects of trust, I think, are really going to help us ask those clear, focused questions. So that's what I see happening, I think, with most of the instances with new coaches. And so now I wanted to give you some examples of, what do these types of questions sound like? And so I went back through some of my notes. I pulled some examples from the coaching demos that I listen into and came up with sort of the top things that I typically hear. So the first one, those stacking questions. So that's when we're asking multiple questions in one. So an example of that could be something like, so tell me what you want to work on today and what it feels like and what that feels like to you, and what would you want your goal to be out of the end of the session? What do you want to work on, and what's currently happening in this area for you? So we've stacked a whole bunch of things in there. What do you want the focus of the coaching to be? How does that feel for you? What do you want to get out of this session? And what's currently happening? So we've stacked multiple questions in one. And what happens here is the client gets confused, right? They're not sure what you're asking. They're going to be unsure of what to answer first. And probably what's going to happen more than anything is they're just going to answer your last question, right? Because that's the one that's most fresh in their minds. It's the most recent one. So that would be an example of that stacked question. We're just asking multiple questions in one. Then the client doesn't know what to answer. So then we have leading questions. So leading questions are really where we're leading the client to a particular answer that's usually based on an assumption coming from our end, right? So we're leading them in a particular direction. So an example of that could be something like, do you think you could maybe try meditating 3 days a week for 5 minutes to start? So we've put a suggestion in there. I mean, this is really a suggestive question, right? We've actually got a suggestion formulated as a question. Another one could be, could you work out with your husband? We're leading it in that direction. We're putting a suggestion in there as opposed to, would a coaching buddy be supportive or helpful for you, right? You might also say, do you think having a conversation would help? So again, we're suggesting, we're leading that there's a particular answer here that we're looking for. So what happens here is the client sort of feels like you're the expert, right? If you're including a suggestion or a leading them to a particular answer in your question, or if you're including that, they obviously think that that's the right way to go, right? That's the right approach. That's the right tactic to take. So they feel like they should do it. They feel like they should take your recommendation. So what this does, it does not give the client the full opportunity to really come up with their own action plan, right? So what we're doing here is we're not trusting the client. We're not trusting that they have the answers inside of them, and we're not providing a really clear opportunity for your client to come up with whatever's going to work best for them. So within this one, these leading questions, what I hear happening a lot is the do questions. And these are not open-ended questions. When we start a question with do, it usually leads, do you think you could do this? Do you think you could do that? Do you think you could try this? It's either going to be a yes or a no or sure, probably, maybe, that I could do that. That's going to be the answer. So these questions are not great questions. Do you think? Do you? So do you? Any question, sort of broaden this out a little bit, any question where you is the second word is probably not a great question. So do you, should you, could you, will you, might you, any of those, you're probably then gonna lead into a leading question. There's probably gonna be a suggestion that comes after that, right? So those types of questions we really do wanna avoid altogether. So like I said, these types of questions usually lead to a yes or a no answer, or the client kind of just saying, yeah, sure, I could do that. But we can tell, from that response that they're not really engaged in this. They're not really excited about this because they didn't come up with it. They're just taking your lead, right? So those are leading questions. And then we have, of course, the wordy and rambling questions. And so we're just asking a question in a bunch of different ways. We're stringing together various nuances, assumptions, and again, this is really going to lead the client feeling really confused. So a question like this could be, so if you were to look ahead, what would the ideal scenario be? Sort of like, tell me your vision. Like, if you could get through this, what could happen for you? So this is a question all about what's the ideal case, right? What's the ideal scenario? What's the vision that you have? And so we've strung together a bunch of different ways to say the same thing in order to provide clarity for the client. That's what the coach thinks. I'm providing clarity by asking it in a whole bunch of different ways, but really the client's probably going to be confused. So really want to avoid those types of just wordy, rambling questions. So that gives you a little bit of an example of some of these stacking questions, the leading questions, the wordy and rambling questions that we want to avoid. And so what do we do about this, right? And of course, there are lots of strategies and tactics, and just learning more about high mileage and powerful questions is great. If you want to learn more about this, I really encourage you to do some more research. But I heard a wonderful tip a couple of weeks ago from a student actually that I was doing some buddy coaching with, and she had had a lot of previous training in life coaching and other coach trainings, and the client or the coach that coached her asked a lot of wordy, rambling, leading, and stacked questions. And so in our debrief after, we got talking about, how do we, really nail this down and ask those focused and clear questions. And the tip that this coach shared was one that she had learned from a mentor of hers, which was really simple, but there's so much, in this one. It's trust the first question that comes to mind. So really use your intuition around the question and keep your question to, 7 or 8 words. That's a great length for a high mileage, powerful question. And ask the question and then just pause, right? Ask it once, be clear and focused with it, and then pause and allow the client to share. So what's going to happen here is, if the client doesn't have enough information, if they don't understand the question, then they're going to ask for clarification, right? So we have to trust that they're going to know what we're asking in that short, powerful, high mileage question, and that if they don't, they will ask, right? They'll ask for clarification. I don't understand what you're asking me. Could you say that in a different way? Could you tell me more about that? I really don't get it. Absolutely, then we can follow up with more. But ask that first powerful question, trust your gut, trust your intuition that you've got the right question, and then ask it, and then pause, allow the client to come up with the answer. And then again, it's okay to pause after for you to formulate your next question. So that's when we get into, then we're going to reflect back, and then we're going to, pause to think about what our next question is. So if we recap here, just a couple of these points that I really want to reinforce today is that, as a new coach, you might just not be feeling confident in your coaching skills. You haven't had enough practice yet. And so that's usually the case of asking these wordy, stacked, and leading questions. So, bottom line here is trusting yourself, trusting in your own intuition that you are going to know what the right question is to ask. Don't make it overly complicated, right? Good, powerful questions do not have to be complex or complicated questions. They can be really simple. So trust in yourself that you'll be able to come up with the question. Trust in the coach, in the client, that they have the answer inside of them. And as well, if they don't understand the question, we have to trust that they're going to ask for clarification, and then we can provide it. And then trust in the coaching process. We ask a question, we reflect back, and then we come up with that next question. And we pause, we leave room for the silences to see what comes up. So those are just that tip for me, trust your intuition. Ask, a powerful question that's about 7 or 8 words long. Really be clear and focused with your question. And, that's going to provide for a much more powerful coaching experience for your clients. So this is all about trust. It's all about practice. It's all about building your confidence in your coaching skills, and particularly around asking high mileage and powerful questions. So I hope this has been helpful for you today. Just a quick little tip, and maybe also some awareness for you about what some of these pitfalls are that you might be falling into in your own coaching. So thanks for tuning in today, everyone. If you have any questions about any of this, please feel free to post them in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them after, as I go back and look at those questions. And if you're not already part of my Facebook community, where I do these tutorials, where we talk about, coaching skills topics with like-minded health coaches, I would really love for you to join us there. And it's called Coaching Skills for Health Coaches. So you can find me there on Facebook. So thanks for tuning in today. I hope this was a helpful tutorial for you. Bye for now.